Yeah. Yeah. When you see some light, that's a breakthrough. Concrete jungle, it's a damn zoo. Eyes wide, while they live on snooze. I'm hoping what you touch impacts some souls. Picture perfect, nigga, like a centerfold. I'm all about my bread, that's the dinner roll. Do it on my lonely, you can send the word. I remember drinking until my speech was slurred. But karma is the bitch, you better treat it right. It's power in these thoughts, she gave me mic. But this your life, nigga roll the dice. Eviction notice, try not to notice. But through your ups and downs, trying to find your purpose. Girded in this truth, blocking evil forces. Good intentions, create your invention. No huddle, 4th and inches. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on your way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. Since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on my way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. But since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold. You headed to them streets, trying to fill the void. Trying to box with God, trying to win our Floyd. All these traps, gotta count the joy. I lift my voice up like a trumpet though. Wash away these sins and these transgressions. Change your outlook, that's your only weapon. But we the black Jews, these is mental Jews. Trying to set a pace while they drive on cruise. Can't trust they action, they intent is cruel. I'm from a sunny place where it's shady people. Erase your history, and they say we equal. Do your all in this world, they make you feeble. Built these corporations, look how they treat you. Get up on your grind, I'm thinking ownership. I know your past mistakes equate to something better. He give visions to the blind, Helen Keller. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on your way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. Since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on my way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. But since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold.
All right. Shalom, shalom. Put a 1 in the chat if I can be heard. Put a 1 in the chat if I can be heard. About to begin the lesson shortly. Shalom, shalom to those online. Shalom to those coming in. All right. All of you can see the title of the lesson, The Parable of the Laborers. Again, shalom to those coming in. Shalom, good sir, good none. What's the word, brother? What's the word? The title of tonight's lesson is The Parable of the Laborers. See, we have the laborers. Dealing with the parable of Christ and how symbolic and how it very much parallels to these times now and who and what we are as ambassadors of Yahawashi. Alayah, shalom, elder, shalom. All right, so where we're going to start off and begin is Matthew chapter 20, the parable of the hired laborers. This is a parable that Yahawashi is giving unto Peter in response to the prior chapter when Peter had asked, what would we have considering that we have left and forsaken everything? And Yahawashi told Peter that they would sit on the throne of his glory, sitting upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel, and that they would also receive an hundredfold and shall inherit everlasting life. And then ended with verse 30 in chapter 19, saying, the many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And he said this because of this parable he's about to give here, to parallel everything all together, to give more of the significance and importance of the message, to paint it all in. And we know that Yahawashi gave these parables because unto the disciples, being particularly who he always spoke to in parables, he said, unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. So let's begin Matthew chapter 20 and verse 1. Just read loud up.
This is Matthew 20, verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard.
So this is important because for the kingdom of heaven, we know that the Son of Man, being Yahawashi, will return with the heavenly armies to come and judge the world and to redeem the children of Israel. And the householder, it's like the householder that went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. The precepts are going to come across your mind. You're going to think of scriptures. Feel free to post and put them in the chat so I can read them, because you're going to see the parallels of where I'm going with this and see why I'm bringing this up. Go ahead and continue reading.
And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle.
So, verse 2 says, and when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day. Now, an exchange was made for whatever time that these men had come into work, because remember, it says he went out early in the morning. He had agreed with them for a penny a day. Now, remember, this is roughly over 2,000 years ago. Not, one cent now as it would be in our time. A penny in this particular time would be what's called a denarius. This was the ordinary pay for a day's work. This was the principal silver coin during the Roman Empire. And of course, the New Testament is during the Roman Empire occupational period. So this penny a day was the day's worth of work that he agreed these early laborers, that when he had gone out into his the marketplace, meaning when he saw laborers that needed work to do, he agreed with them to pay them for a day's worth of work. And it says he sent them in his vineyard. So after he agreed, and this is the exchange that was made, he sent them to work in his vineyard. Verse 3.
And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace.
So notice something. He went about the third hour, that's key, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, which means people are looking for work, which means at any given time of day, anybody can come inside the marketplace and try to find labor. Keep reading.
Verse 4, and said unto them, go ye also into the vineyard, and whosoever is right I will give you. And they went their way.
So he said, whatsoever is right I will give you, and they went their way. So they weren't hired like the men were at the beginning hour, but he did agree to also pay them what their worth of work was accordingly. Unlike the people in verse 2 that he hired right at the beginning of the early morning, and it says at the third hour, so as the sky is rising and you see the different positions of the sun, we know that evening between roughly about 1 to 2 o'clock is when the sky is at its limit, and then from midday onwards, the sun begins to set, also known as the evening. So it says they went their way. Let's keep reading. Go ahead.
Verse 5, And he went out about the sixth and ninth hour,
Okay.
and did likewise.
So the householder is continually looking for those to come into his vineyard and work. He is continually and constantly looking for those that are looking for employment. He promised all their wages accordingly for whatever hour he received the new labor. Keep reading.
Verse 6, and about the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand ye here all day idle?
So he questioned these men because they were just standing there right about the 11th hour. So if you want to say the day, let's say 6 a.m. because it's early in the morning, from about 6 a.m., the third hour, 9 a.m., continuing for the 6th hour, that's 12 p.m., 9th hour, 3 p.m., and then 11th, that would roughly be 3 p.m. from 11. Well, that's a fast forward of about 8 hours. More so into the evening time towards the sun being down. Again, these are modern day time estimates trying to parallel and correlate it to ancient timing for whenever early would be. Remember, it says that even unto the 11th hour, he was still looking for laborers. And he asked them, why are you not standing there doing anything? All of you have been in school, and I'm sure all of you have been questioned by teachers when your teacher asks you, what are you doing? And you say nothing, and then your teacher tells you that's the problem. You not doing anything is the problem because you're supposed to be doing something. So the reason why he's questioning them is because he even goes out at the 11th hour towards the evening time, meaning he's still looking for hirers and laborers to come work into his vineyard. So now the householder was not only looking for workers, which is why he was at different hours of the day finding more and more laborers. There was also a lot of work to do in the vineyard. So by verse 7, he's not only still looking for workers, but later toward the evening time, which means that the householder has an inexhaustible amount of supply and work for anybody to be doing that he finds. Specifically for those who actually wanted to work, which is why he questioned these men in verse 6, saying, why are you standing here doing nothing all day being idle? Read verse 6 again.
Matthew 20, verse 6. And about the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and said unto them, Why stand ye here all day idle?
Right.
All the day idle.
Continue, verse 7.
Verse 7. They say unto him, Because no man hath hired us. He said it unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that shall ye receive.
So he also promised them, even though they were later hired, that they would also receive their pay for the hour that they were hired and continue on forth from their work. So what's important is that he promised all of them pay accordingly to whatever hour it is that he hired them to work in his vineyard. What's also important about that is that we have to realize and understand how this correlates to us. Every single one of us have time and years we put into this walk. As Israelites know it as into this truth. We were not all hired at the same time. We are all these laborers because we are all coming in at different times. Some of us started off early in the morning. Some of us were hired at the third hour, at the 5th hour, at the 9th hour, at the 11th hour, so on and so forth. The householder in this parable being likened unto the kingdom of heaven means that we all didn't start off at the same time. And we all come from different walks of life. Is the correlation I'm also trying to make going into this parable. So it says, they say unto him, because no man hath hired us. Well, he replied and said, he saith unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that ye shall also receive. Now I have a question. Does anyone know why there's so much work to be done inside this vineyard? Does anyone know why there's so much work to be done within the vineyard?
I'll say the upkeep so you can make sure this land's profitable.
It's definitely a good answer. Any answers in the chat? Anybody online? Why is there an inexhaustible supply of work for all these laborers that the householder is hiring to get done? Joseph said the children of Israel must be saved. Not necessarily a parallel to the parable, because these men are going out there working. The nun said because there's not a lot of workers. The nun absolutely. That's the evident point to the parable, because he's going out at every different hour and at different times to hire the laborers to work into the vineyard. McQuash said laborers are few. This is setting that will be established forever. Kana. Anybody else? Anybody else? Well, let's get Matthew chapter 9 and verse 36. Let's see. Matthew chapter 9, let's start at verse 35.
This is Matthew's chapter 9, verse 35.
Go ahead.
And Yahawashi went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people.
So we know that the gift and the authority Yahawashi received of the Father and what he was blessed with pertaining to the knowledge and gifts that he had, he applied it and used it. So it's important for us to understand that, you know, the parallel to the kingdom of heaven, he is the householder. And as he is doing, he would set forth the example for what those following him and those that would come after him would also have to do as well themselves. So this is important because as he exercised tirelessness and worked in the manner that he did, we have to see and understand that just as the householder was hiring laborers, this is the mentality that we have to have as well. Meaning there's always going to be work to do. Verse 36.
Verse 36. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd.
Right? Because the people in the nation of Israel is likened unto a sheep, and we are indeed in need of a savior and a shepherd. And we know that Yahawashi ultimately is it, and we've been given countless amounts of them throughout the annals of time. So this is important because it says because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. Now the point of the laborers is that as they're tilling and working, they are able to reap the benefits of the crops. They are able to work the fields so that way the land may be useful and bring forth fruit, abundance, supply, agriculture. All of you have seen the thumbnail. Look at the endless amount of supply of harvest that there is. We know that the nation of Israel is compared as the stars of the sky and as the sands of the sea, which means we are innumerable. So if we know and understand that in the same like manner, when it says a sheep having no shepherd, we are exactly the same way. Common faith without works, absolutely. Keep reading.
Verse 37. Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few.
So he said the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. This is parallel and key to Matthew chapter 20, and why he also said and stated that he kept hiring laborers. Because there's an inexhaustible amount of work to do, but yet the laborers are not much in number that all of the work may be handled by them. Let's parallel it to today. We know that there's a lot of Israelite organizations, but yet being scattered across the four corners of the earth, having to seal the elect and the 1/3 of whomever they are, we have to keep working. We have to keep tending to the vineyard and laboring in the field until Yahawashi returns. Until that number is sealed, no man knows, and no man knows the day or hour that Yahawashi will return except for the Father only. So with us understanding that, we have to continue working and tending to the vineyard until he returns and delivers the nation of Israel out of this captivity. So this is important because this explains the parable in Matthew chapter 20. The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Verse 38.
Matthew 9, verse 38. For ye, therefore, the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers unto his harvest.
So this is important because we're supposed to pray that the Lord of the harvest, being Yahawashi, we know we are his ambassadors, he will send forth laborers into his harvest. This is important to understand because, as the saying goes, each one teach one. And we know that if we're to begin this, we're supposed to bring forth fruit and recruit men and women into the body of Yahawashi, that it may nurture and grow accordingly, but also on behalf of the fact that we are also working towards that mark and we are pushing towards the kingdom of heaven. We are trying to help to seal and close that number just as any other Israelite organizations. Let's get John chapter 15 and verse 16. This is the first half of the parable I want to deal with pertaining to the laborers because this is important. This is explaining why we're doing what we're doing, but also on behalf of the fact that we have to be sent out. We are sent out for a reason. We have a mission. We have a purpose to accomplish and fulfill. Go ahead.
This is John chapter 15, verse 16. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you.
Go ahead.
And ordained you.
The word ordained means to invest officially with ministerial or priestly authority to enact or establish by law, decree, or an edict. So Yahawashi said, I have chosen you and ordained you. Keep reading.
That ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain.
Go ahead.
That whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you.
So this is important because that your fruit not only remain, this is why the laborers within the parable had a job in the first place. Yahawashi is the householder himself. And it's important to understand that word householder there in the Greek, it means master of the house. In Matthew chapter 26 and verse 49, Yahawashi was called master by Judas, and also master by those that oppose him, being the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So this is important to understand because he is the one that sent forth the decree, because he was the one that was sent, according to John chapter 7 and verse 16. My doctrine is not of mine, but of him that sent me. Yahawashi was sent, therefore he has the authority and the permission to send those himself, those that he ordains for the service, those that he has given the authority to and has sent forth, and now we are ambassadors to fulfill and accomplish the same purpose and mission that he did. We know 1 Corinthians 11 and 1, Paul says, be ye followers of me, even as I am a follower of Christ. All we're doing is following the chain order. So with that being said, we know that Yahawashi exercises God-given abilities and authorities in his own work. Let's get Matthew chapter 8 and verse 14.
Right? Yep. This is Matthew chapter 8, verse 14. And when Yahawashi was come into Peter's house, he saw his wife mother laid and sick of a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto him.
Go ahead.
When the even was come, they brought unto him many that were possessed with devils, and he cast out the spirits with his word and healed all that were sick.
So realize, right, that in verse 16, there's 2 colons because it's going to continue to tell you he wasn't just doing these things, but why? Keep reading.
Verse 17, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying himself, took our infirmities and bare our sickness.
So it's by prophecy that he's doing these things and fulfilling everything that we're reading about. This is important because as he did, so are we to be doing now. This is why we go amongst our own people. This is why we have to do everything we can to teach, heal, raise up, give food, so on and so forth of what pertains to the ministry. Teaching is one of the biggest offices, if not the biggest, but there are also other offices and compartmentalized things we also need to do within this ministry. Keep reading.
Verse 18, now when Yahawashi saw a great multitudes about him, he gave commandment to depart unto the other side.
Go ahead.
And a certain scribe came and said unto him, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest.
Go ahead.
And Yahawashi said unto him, the foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man have not where to lay his head.
So this explains the tirelessness and how much Yahawashi worked efficaciously to the degree and the point where he said he doesn't have anywhere to lay his head and rest. And this shows how important it is to show how much work there is to do. And when we're sent out to do whatever it is that, pertaining to teaching, pertaining to our offices, pertaining to class, so on and so forth, it shows we are supposed to remain committed to the mission like he was. And we're also supposed to note that there is an inexhaustible amount of supply to do with this ministry pertaining to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's why he said the harvest is plenteous. There's plenty of work to do. So what can any of you say, like those men that were hired at the 11th hour, and say, well, no man is given his work? There's everything to do. Everything. Go ahead.
One of the things that you have to remember is that you have to stay inspired. And one of the things to really stay inspired is what we're going over is that there's a lot of work to do. Obviously, whether you're in the truth or not, Israelites, by blood, the whole nation, there's work that needs to be done. There's still, Christianity is still, out there. Islam is still out there. Drugs are still out there. So when you become self-centered and not focused on the mission, you forget about that, you're missing the whole point of your calling, right? You're missing the whole point of you knowing what you know and understanding what you understand.
Okay. Absolutely. And let's get 2 Peter. We're done with that. Get 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 10.
This is 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 10. Wherefore, the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if ye do these things, ye shall never fall.
So, for if you do these things, you shall never fall. When it says to make diligence to make your calling and election sure, that should be fulfilling for all of you. You know why? Because it says election, which means you were chosen. So why would you not want to be working? It said diligence because it's the one thing you have to keep applying constantly and constantly and constantly in this faith and in this walk. Because it's the one thing that you need that will keep you going. And that's the promise of it out of the mouth of Paul. He said calling an election sure. You were already elected because you are the nation and people of Israel, whom the kingdom of heaven is promised for. So why would you not work towards and for something that has been promised and given to you since the foundations of the entire planet? It's yours already. Just like how Mahayar brought out in his last class, how Joshua was told to go possess the city, to go possess the land. It's already given to you. It's already given to you. was already established. You just have to enact and physically go do it, which is exactly what happened when you read the book of Joshua. The Israelites displaced and disinherited the Canaanites, and it became the nation and statehood of Israel. So if we know and understand that this calling and election, we have to make sure you're already chosen. You just have to solidify and stamp whatever place it is that you have and work towards the mark. Remember, this walk, this truth, this enlightenment, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You need not just the physical stamina, you need the emotional, the psychological, and the spiritual stamina to keep on going. And as we're reading here, you need that to keep the fuel going. This is what it means when it says to make your calling and have the diligence to make it sure. It's already been promised. You just have to step it down in place and work for it.
I'll just add to that. This is a calling. Just like I was saying, this is not, when you start looking at this journey in your life as a career or as a sacrifice, you're going to miss the calling. Start looking at it like a calling, because that's exactly what it is. He said, from the womb, I know thee. Mm-hmm. It's a calling, right? You see things that others don't see. It's a calling. So, when the scripture says to give diligence and to make your calling and election sure, make sure diligently that this calling is for you.
Absolutely. The race is not to the swift. And it's not because it doesn't matter about who finishes in first place. The Lord doesn't care about first place. The Lord cares about you enduring. This is why Yahawashi said in Matthew 24:13, he that endureth unto the end, the same shall be saved. So now, getting back to the parable and the work and the amount of supply that there is with the laborers, let's get Barak chapter 7 and verse 15.
17, right?
7 and 15.
This is Barak chapter 7, verse 15. Hate not laborious work, neither husbandry, which the Most High hath ordained.
This is what Adam was from the very inception and beginning of time. You're not supposed to hate laborious work, especially as men. Why? Because that's what you were put on this earth to do. And considering that from the very beginning of time, we'd have to work from the sweat of our brow, well, it's really not a choice. Men are conquerors, men are leaders, men are fighters. This is why from the very beginning of time, empires have always fought with one another. This is why men have always warred with one another. So this is why it's important to not hate laborious work, because this is what you were made and created and designed to do. May I also add in the fact that, a side note, that America has classified and said within studies and statements that 1/3 of the entirety of the American population is obese. For the most advanced nation on earth, that has also the most expensive healthcare and a gym in every single state that should be accessible to everyone, you should physically be putting yourself to work. The Lord did not make and create you to be stationary. You were not made to be and stand still for extended periods of time to where you live a sedentary lifestyle and you gain weight and weight and weight. The Lord did not make and create you for that. The nun said, remember the last will be first. Absolutely. Shak said the race is not always won by the swift, but the one who endures to the end. Absolutely. Bakwash put the definition of husbandry, care, cultivation, and the breeding of crops and animals. Perfect definition. This is also what Noah himself was doing. Remember, we are called also to husbandry, to work the vineyard. Another symbol to the fact that the parallel that the men were called into the field to work and till it. Absolutely. And the point of me bringing that out is that to show your body is a machine. You were not made to be and stand still for extended periods of time, let alone at the fact that you are not meant to gain so much weight, considering that we are, all of our bodies are different. We all have, different builds, genetics. We all are in different environments, so on and so forth. You're not made to the point where you become incapable of taking care of yourself, because every single one of you are capable of doing so, no matter what kind of job it is that you have. And you also have accessibilities to where you should be able to do simple exercises pertaining to calisthenics, cardio, and jogging, so on and so forth. So the reason why I bring that out is because we were made and created to work. We were made and created not to be, robots, but we were made and designed for our bodies to exercise and put forth that we may enjoy the fruits of our labor.
We were made to live.
Yeah, you weren't made to die, which is what obesity kills. All right, so we got laborious work. We know we're supposed to be doing it. Let's get Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 16. This is the mindset that the householder was going against, that those men at the 11th hour, he presupposed that they had. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 18.
This is Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 18. Right?
Yep.
By much slothfulness the building decayeth, and through idleness of the hands of the house droppeth through.
So, to read this, I'm going to read this inside also the GNT and the ISV. The GNT version says, when you are too lazy to repair your roof, it will leak and the house will fall. The International Standard Version says, through slothfulness, the roof deteriorates and the house leaks because of idleness. Your own house and things happening to you and upon you is literally because of your own laziness. Slothfulness within your own lives shouldn't be tolerated to any degree, because we are all made to be workmen. And that also applies to women, but in the manner and sense that they have their own offices amongst sisters in the sisterhood to be working themselves.
Go to Proverbs 31.
So, in understanding that we are all made and we are all parts of this body that are supposed to be functioning and working together. Laziness vexes me, absolutely. Because we're all supposed to be working and we all can be doing something. Again, going back to that teacher example, I'm sure all of you have been said by your teacher, what are you doing? And then you apply nothing, and then the teacher has a problem with you because you're not doing anything. Well, that's the problem. You're supposed to be doing something and not nothing. Through the idleness of hands, the building decays, which means rot. And through the idleness of hands, the house drops through, which means your roof caves in because you're not keeping it up and structured as you're supposed to be. When you have a home, you don't just leave stuff lying around. You don't just leave it untended to and not taken care of. You make your bed. You put away your clothes. You pick up things, toys, whatever, so on and so forth off the floor. Well, think of that and expand it spiritually to this parable from Matthew 20 we're going into, and look at the vineyard. Before we get out there, everything starts inwardly, which is why it's a process, and there are stages to this. Before you are sent out, you have to be called first and work towards that mark and position. We just had brothers that were raised up, and at some point, they would be ordained to teach out on the street, to read, so on and so forth, of whatever office it is that suits them in their role that they will then be fulfilling. So I will say, all of this is a process. It starts within you first, in getting yourself right first before you are called, ordained, and chosen to go out and fulfill and do the mission of whatever office it is that you have. Now let's get back to Matthew chapter 20, and let's start at verse 8. Matthew chapter 20 and verse 8.
This is Matthew chapter 20, verse 8. So when even was come, the Lord of the vineyard saith unto his steward, call the laborers, and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first.
So he did this for a reason. He did this for a reason. Beginning, so the men that were hired at the 11th hour were in line first, and the men at the first hour were last. He's doing this for a reason. Go ahead.
Verse 9. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny.
So remember, the denarius, this is the silver coin used within the Roman Empire. They receive a day's worth of pay for what it is that they work, depending on whatever hour it is that they work. And remember, he said to the men after that were hired after verse 2, he says, and whatsoever is right, I will give you. So you know what he saw right? He gave them a day's worth of pay. Go ahead.
Verse 10. But when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny.
Right? Go ahead.
And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house,
Go ahead.
saying, These last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have borne the burden and the heat of the day.
Now, it's entirely understandable why they feel this way, because they were working more longer hours than the rest of the men that were hired throughout the entirety of the whole day. Now, the workers were started the earliest definitely were justified because they worked longer hours since the early hours of the morning, but forgot that they had agreed to a day's worth of pay at the beginning of the parable, going back to verse 2. It says, because they were paid last, they supposed that they should have received more, forgetting the agreement that was made since the very beginning of the chapter. So it's entirely easy to sympathize with these men that worked all day, but the landowner or the householder reassured him that he did no wrong and fulfilled his end of the bargain, and he reminded them of the agreement and also kept the law. Go ahead.
Verse 13. But he answered one of them and said, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst not thou agree with me for a penny?
So he reminded them, he said, Friend. This is a key giveaway at who this man is pertaining to the household. Get John, hold that, get John chapter 13. Excuse me. John chapter 15 and verse 14.
All right. This is John chapter 15, verse 14.
Right.
Ye are my friends.
Say that again.
Ye are my friends.
Keep reading.
If ye do whatsoever I command you.
Continue.
Henceforth I call you not servants.
Right.
For the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth. But I have called you friends.
Read that again.
But I have called you friends.
So this is why they were referred to as friends within the parable, because the householder himself is Yahawashi. He said, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 20. Let's read verse 1 again, going into verse 2.
This is Matthew 20. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard.
Go ahead.
And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard.
So, though it's understandable why these men got mad that were hired at the earliest part of the morning, they forgot that this is the pay that they agreed to. And then for the rest of the workers, he was fair, because if the workers that were hired at the very beginning should have received more pay, he would have said so. But he fulfilled his portion of the deal, saying for a penny a day, which is a day's worth of work. Which, continuing to read, he went on more at different hours of the day, hiring more laborers, and said in the following verses, and go you also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, I will give you. Which means he was more than generous himself to be paying and giving the same pay of the workers that started earlier in the morning, the same pay of the workers that started later in the morning. But it shows his generosity in doing so because he didn't have to. Read verse 13 again.
But he answered one of them and said, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst not thou agree with me for a penny?
They did, which is why we just read the verse. Go ahead.
Take that thine is, and go thy way. I will give unto this last even as unto thee.
Why? Because he also agreed with them, saying whatever is right, he will give them, which is also the day's worth of pay. Go ahead.
Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with my own? Is thine eye evil because I am good?
Go ahead.
So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many be called, but few chosen.
So many be called and few chosen. So the nun said that's the same as this truth. Men can teach 20 years versus a brother for 2 years, but both get the same reward, absolutely. And the parallel to it is that the Lord can call anybody at any given time, and we don't know what the reward will be, because it's going to give to every man accordingly.
And even like with this parable, you see like, you know, some worked early, some worked late. You know, everybody's circumstance was different, and in the circumstance, you know, the reward is the same. You know, some of us brothers go through a lot differently. You know, some of us the same, but it's just, it happens on a different. It's the Lord's time. You can't really can't complain.
You say that as a day, but with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is 1 day. We're not on the Lord's time, nor are we in control of it. You know, so the nun put an excellent point. You don't know at one time a brother can come in. He may be rank raised faster than the man that was here for more time than him.
Right.
And as the Spirit sees fit through our generals and captains, we don't know through the Spirit how that will work. And as it may be, brothers that are given that, and accordingly, for whatever time or however much time that they've been in this truth and this enlightenment, the Spirit sees fit to rank raise them up,
Right.
and give them their office and give them their purpose and mission accordingly.
Then like verse 15, it says,
What?
is it not lawful for me to do what I will with my own? Is thine eye evil? You know, that's like checking yourself. Check yourself. Is your eye evil because a brother has come in and he's at a higher rank or a higher moving pace than you? You know, check yourself. There'd be a lot of people like that. You know?
And the point of this is that the Lord doesn't deal so much with numbers, because when you constantly see in the scriptures, it's beautiful how the Lord always has a way of dealing with those that are second. If you look at from the very beginning, from Genesis, Abraham isn't the oldest, but he was chosen.
Right.
Abraham had 2 sons, and then had more after Sarah died. He had his firstborn Ishmael through Hagar, and then he had his secondborn through Sarah. Who was chosen of the 2? The secondborn, who was the firstborn, not literally one, but the one that was chosen. That was Isaac. Isaac has 2 children, 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau is the elder, he's the firstborn. He came out first. Jacob held the heel, he came out second. Who was chosen of the 2? Jacob. The Lord doesn't always deal with firstborn, because sometimes it's not about the firstborn being first.
David, the firstborn.
But yet he was chosen out of all of his siblings. Saul was the first king over Israel.
Right.
David was the second king over Israel. The Lord does not always deal with number 1, because number 1 is not always the firstborn and chosen.
There's only one. That's Yahawashi.
Exactly. The nun said everyone put in their brick regardless, because we all work for a common goal. Absolutely. Of course, he even displayed that even with Jacob. Absolutely. And the point of it is to show that we don't have the eyes, the thoughts, and the mindset of what the Lord is thinking and what he's doing and how he's working. Quasha able to. Cain was older. Absolutely. Excellent example. This shows that the Lord deals with everyone accordingly at their own time. Some of you may have been talking to people, you know, dropping nuggets of knowledge here and there. You know, teaching at camp. You may have met somebody you've spoken to a couple of years back, and then, you know, they're finally coming along and getting it. They're all on the Lord's time. Yahawashi said, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. The Lord can call anybody, no matter at what time and no matter when. Think of it like King Manasseh, not literally, but when he was locked up in prison, he repented, and the Lord delivered him back into the into the kingdom of Judah, and allowed him to reign back on his throne after so much wickedness and him cleaning up his act and doing everything that he did. We don't know if that's what's happening with individuals that we have taught and spoken to that aren't here now. No one knows that but the Lord himself, and we don't know if the Lord may deliver that person and bring them back. When it says, so that the last shall be first and the first last, you don't know the order and the calling of whom the Lord has chosen and will eventually bring forth. Sister Azalea said the Lord quite literally called Enoch. Exactly, he was the seventh from Adam. And he does what he pleases. We're not going to say that, we're not going to make it seem as though we can put what we feel on the Most High and feel like it's wrong for him to do so because of what we feel. That's not how it works. You're the creator and you are the creation. So understand that he is the master and in control of all things and everything. So now, in verse 15, getting back to the parable, Matthew 20, the householder responds, is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? Why did he ask this? Who knows why he asked this? In verse 15, why did he ask this? Let's get some answers. This is important. Because even within this parable, something that may have not been obvious, I'm going to show you and point out. In verse 15, why was this asked? In verse 15, it says, is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? Why did he ask this in verse 15? And then finishes the parable in verse 16. Give it a couple before I start reading answers to see if anybody has an answer or anything they wanted to say.
I would say that he's like I said, he's addressing, are you evil? Are you envious? Are you pride?
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to, provoke that thing, really that jealousy out of somebody. Is he evil for blessing others? Is that a bad thing? That others are receiving a blessing and you're not, or it's the same? I think a popular term that people use nowadays that could be compared to this is main character syndrome, where you believe, you're the one, you're the protagonist of everything, and you shall receive everything, and you become again self-centered and don't care about nobody else's experiences.
Right.
That's my answer.
Joe Bean said every time I read the countless verses that state the last shall be first, reminds me of the women who washed Jesus' feet, followed by the disciples questioning her motives. That's an excellent example. It's the people doing the smaller things that we tend to look over but don't realize how bigger the message is behind them doing it. As Aaliyah said, don't get mad or envious of someone because they're doing what you should be doing and or what you're not doing. Since not necessarily, because they all did agree to work, but remember they're envious and upset because of the pay. Joe Beans put Luke chapter 7 and 41, there was a certain creditor which had two debtors. So one owed 500 pence and the other 50, and when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Okay. Yashar said, rebuking him, going back to the law of Deuteronomy 15:9. That's one answer I'm looking for. The nun says, well, I'm driving, but I'll say it ties to just because you work, you put more work than the next, don't get prideful. Kana, I agree. Joe Beans put the rest of the scripture. It says, tell me therefore which of them will love him the most. Simon answered and said, I suppose that he to whom we forgave most. And he said unto him, thou hast rightly judged. Right? All right. So Yashar gave one answer. Let's read it. Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 9.
Is it?
Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 9.
This is Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 9.
This is talking about the release of the 7th year, but Yashar, I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Beware that there will be not a thought in thy wicked heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and thy eye be evil against thy poor brother.
That's the point of this whole verse. Thine eye be evil against thy poor brother. Go ahead.
And thou givest him not, and he cry unto the Lord against thee, and it be sin unto thee.
So these men were asked by the householder, why is thine eye evil against me when I am good? The other answer I was looking for, though you guys gave good answers, was in Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 13. Let's read it. Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 13.
This is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 13. Thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him.
You're not supposed to fraudulently deal with your neighbor, nor rob him, or extort him. Remember, we read in Matthew 20 and chapter 20 and verse 1 to verse 2, he was going out hiring people, and he said and agreed with those laborers that worked at the earliest hours of the morning for a penny a day, a day's worth of work. They worked in the heat of the day, as they said, but remember, he agreed to pay them for that penny a day. This is why it's important. Keep reading.
Thou shalt not defraud thy brother, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night until the morning.
So it's not supposed to abide with you all night until the morning. Give him his worth and work of what it is that you owe him. And what did he do after all the work was done of the day? He paid them all. So he didn't defraud them. He didn't extort them to keep their wages. He paid all of them accordingly as he had agreed. So when he said in their response to them being upset and mad at him in Matthew 20, well, back now, in verse 13, he said, but he answered one of them and said, friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst not thou agree with me for a penny? Take that thine is and go thy way, for I will give unto this last even unto thee. He said, is it not lawful because the householder kept the law, agreeing and making that agreement with them, going back to verse 2. Even in the parables, Yahawashi shows the importance of keeping the law, figuratively and symbolically, because in this parable, he is the householder himself doing so. That's why he said, is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own eye? Is your eye evil because I am good? Why is he good? Because the law is good. What is he doing? He's keeping the law because he's keeping confident in the agreement that he made with them back in verse 2. And that's why it says, so the last shall be first and the first last, for many be called, but few chosen. Why? Because the order doesn't matter and who came in and when. What matters is the work is getting done. Paul came after the disciples. Barnabas came after the disciples. Mark, Luke.
John the Baptist came before Yahawashi.
Right. And look at the work being done. He said, bring forth fruits worthy of repentance. The work was still being done, though he was doing it in a different way. We are Rungadal. There's multiple camps and organizations out there all across the United States and the world because Israel is scattered across the four corners of the earth. Look at the work being done. That's the whole point to this parable. The work is important, and that's what matters. Really quick. Just also. Let's get Second Ezra chapter 2 and verse 42. Read to verse 45. Yep.
This is Second Ezra chapter 2, verse 42.
Go ahead.
I, Ezra, saw upon the Mount Zion a great people, who I could not number, and they all praised the Lord with songs. And in the midst of them there was a young man of a high stature, taller than all the rest, and upon every one of their heads he set crowns, and was more exalted, which I marveled at greatly. So I asked the angel and said, Sir, what are these? He answered and said unto me, These be they that have put off the mortal clothing and put on the immortal, and now have confessed the name of God. Now are they crowned and received palms.
Right. So this is what we're all working for. And of course, we know the man that is taller than the rest. It's symbolically speaking of the fact that the man handing out crowns has the authority and the preeminence to be doing so, which we know is Yahawashi. That's to return. And Lord willing, in that day, we are the fulfillment of what it is we're reading from the prophet Ezra, going back over 2,400 years ago. He's passing out crowns to all of them. Notice how it didn't go into the order, seniority, who put in the most time. This person came in, that person came in, they started this, they started that. He began this camp, he began that camp, they split from this camp, they split from that camp. Notice from the scripture, it says all of them are receiving crowns. Right. That's the whole purpose of the mission. That's the whole entirety of what it is we're trying to work and strive for. Crowns. To be rewarded when he returns in that day. Those crowns are symbolic of Matthew chapter 20, that penny a day that these workers agreed to work for. They were all given accordingly that they had agreed to. Well, don't we all agree that we should be working toward the mark of the kingdom of heaven? That we may live in everlasting life, being in subjection and rulership to our King Yahawashi, who will be reigning and ruling over the 12 tribes of Israel in the world? Well, if we're all working towards that, we should all be working towards this reward here. And this is just one of the many promises that we read about within the scriptures. All of them will be receiving crowns. In 1 Corinthians 15 to 53, I'll read it. It says, For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. And how do we get there? How do we do that? By establishing and working and putting forth the kingdom of heaven. As they said in their time, by establishing the kingdom of heaven, because the kingdom of heaven starts within you. You are a nation in kingdom building. You're bringing it forth by calling it and working towards that mark. Yahawashi, yes, taught, but you can read about his many works. And even inside the last chapter of John, in the last verse, John said that everything Yahawashi did could not fill all the libraries in the world. So how much did he do that we do not even know about and we're not even aware of?
Or how much he's still doing.
Right. So with us understanding that, we have to realize that we're all working towards the same and common goal, as the nun had commented and said earlier. Let's get 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 9. Let's see another angle of this parable of Matthew 20.
This is 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 9. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry. Ye are God's building.
Now, the water to Bakwash again, because he put the definition of it in the chat. It says we are laborers together with God. You're God's husbandry. You're God's building. He's speaking and talking to men and also to women because we make up this body in this unit, this school, and this family called Ram Gadol Gabari. We are together, united, which is the bigger picture that we should all be understanding, working towards that common goal and mark that we all should be working and striving for. Keep going.
Verse 10. According to the grace of God, which is given unto me, as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereupon.
So Paul laid the foundation, and others are building on top of it. So he said, let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. Because how you're building and going about your establishment, or your camp, your school, your organization, it's very important and it matters. It's supposed to be built upon the scriptures. With the example of Yahawashi and the disciples left behind for us of how we're supposed to go about establishing and doing so. Keep reading.
Verse 11. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Hamashiach Yahawashi.
Absolutely. Because why? He's the cornerstone. If you don't have the cornerstone that he is, then nothing you do can officially be established. Keep going.
Verse 12. Now, if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest.
So, like the parable, though the householder agreed to pay them for a day's worth of work, it's important to understand that when that day comes, your works will be put in the fire. It's going to come out as gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, and stubble. That's important because it shows it's not just how much you're doing in the quantity, it's the quality. Because this is describing quality here within the scripture. The first three are all hardened things, meaning when they're pressed and furnished in the fire, in the furnace, they come out refined and more beautiful. They come out fine and refined for their purpose. Gold, silver, and precious stones. What's interesting about that is that it gives the rank of the top all the way to the bottom. Gold is one, silver is behind it, precious stones then behind that. The last three, what's interesting, is wood, hay, and stubble. Wood, hay, and stubble immediately evaporates and gets incinerated in fire. Which means if your works are burned up as that, you weren't doing anything. You want your works put in the fire and it comes out refurnished on the other side. Which means you are going to earn that crown that Second Ezra was talking about. That's being passed out. All of you should be trying your best and diligence, not only to make your calling and election sure. I'm going to interpolate and add, you should be striving to make your works worth of gold. Because it means you put forth and tried and did your absolute best in what it is you're doing right now. Because when he returns in that day, your works are going to be put in the fire and you're going to get what you earned. You're going to get what you worked for. So when you put your works to the fire, will it come out refined as gold, as silver, or as precious stones? Or is it going to come out as wood, hay, or stubble and be immediately burned up? When that day comes, whatever it is that you are doing here and now is going to be refurnished out on that side, and then it's going to be put forth as whatever it is that you are doing, this is how it was refined in the furnace. If we are refined and tried in the furnace as gold is, we know that Sirach chapter 2 says that. Why wouldn't our works be? What you're doing here and now matters and is very much important. Because when he returns in that day, you want a crown. As Paul said, we don't dare make of ourselves of the elect. But you want to be hopeful that you are of the elect. Don't be prideful thinking that you're of the elect, but work for it. Because no man knows that number who's in it. And we're only guaranteed our salvation by making our diligence and making sure that our calling and election is sure. McQuash said the Most High called Edom stubble in Obadiah. If we don't get it right, we ain't no better. Absolutely, absolutely. Which means we know that Esau is going to be burned up and just be incinerated and evaporate. So if we know and understand that, we want to do our best to put forth our best versions of ourselves and be able to work towards the mark. Let's get 2 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 5.
Thirteen 5, right?
Come. 2 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 5.
This is 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5. Examine yourselves, whether ye be in the faith. Prove your own selves.
Right.
Know ye not your own selves, how that Hamashiach Yahawashi is in you, except ye be reprobates?
So in Matthew 10 and 8, after Yahawashi had commissioned the disciples to go unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he said, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead. Freely ye have received, freely give. That's important because the work starts inwardly before you can start doing it outwardly. It says, whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves. I want to remind and tell all of you, Yahawashi is the master teacher and there's no one above him. But Yahawashi's office wasn't just as a teacher, he was also a healer. The word is supposed to heal you. The word is supposed to replenish you. The word is supposed to wash away who and what you once were. When it says to become a new creature in Christ and to put off the old man in Ephesians chapter 4, you have to heal. You have to recover. You have to be renewed. Yahawashi's office is not just teaching, and it's not just doctrine, and it's not just who has the better, breakdown, who has the better cuts. That's not just what Yahawashi is and was. That's why some of the other scriptures that we've read and outlined earlier emphasize he was also a healer. He had compassion upon the multitudes. That office is also part of what we are supposed to be doing. We are a broken people that need healing, and a very much traumatized people that need healing. It's not just teaching and edifying and breaking apart and breaking down the doctrine. We're in need of healing as a nation. That's an excellent point. Ganun said you can't do that without holding yourself accountable. Absolutely.
I would say Yahawashi was a servant leader. He led, but he also was a servant to our nation.
Excellent point. Excellent point in saying that, because let's now go to Matthew chapter 20 and verse 26. So recognize those things inwardly that hold you back from growing. Absolutely.
You said 26, right?
Yep, Matthew chapter 20 and verse 26.
This is Matthew chapter 20, verse 26. But it shall not be so among you, but whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister.
Why? Because remember back when Rehoboam was told by the men that served in Solomon's time, serve the people, he didn't mean bow down and make yourself, humble before them. A king is supposed to attain to the needs of his servants. Well, if he's the king and they're his servants, you're supposed to serve the people. You're servants to the people. Not necessarily that you're on one knee and permitting them to do whatever. No, you're supposed to be serving them because you're in a greater place and mindset and understanding to do so. Shar said gold's prominence in the Bible is tied to its rarity, beauty, durability, and its role as a symbol of divine majesty and eternal worth. Absolutely. Absolutely. Joe Beans, we're going to get that precept afterwards. So it says, but whosoever be great among you, let him be your minister. Keep reading.
And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant.
This is the mindset Yahawashi wants us to have. The mindset of servanthood. You're serving your people. Right. What can you do for your people? Remember, it's not just always about teaching, the breakdown, the doctrine, the cuts, and everything else, so on and so forth. It's also about healing. And that's the one thing our people don't focus on enough in that particular aspect of Yahawashi. It's healing. We are a broken and traumatized people. And generations of us have come from broken homes. And we know that through the oppression of Esau breaking up our households, it's been even more worse because all we've been doing as a nation is just creating more broken homes. Read verse 28.
Just verse 28. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto.
Read that again.
But even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give life a ransom, and to give his life a ransom for many.
So you see how he said Yahawashi came onto the scene, but he didn't come to be ministered unto. Right. The multitudes and the populace came unto him because he was meant to serve them. Right. He healed them. He cured their ailments. That woman in the book of Mark touched the hem of his garment and became whole and complete. 12 years of having a nonstop menstrual cycle. That was his role, his purpose, his mission, and his office, with the ultimate of it being to sacrifice his life for the nation of Israel and Israel only. You have to have the same mindset and attitude. This is going back to the parable at the beginning of the chapter. The harvest is plenteous, the laborers are few. If the harvest is plenteous, guess what? There's always going to be work to do. There's always going to be work to do.
That's probably the most humblest thing that Yahawashi literally came, healed and served and led our nation and died, his life. He gave his life for a ransom, and he didn't even want a seat in this kingdom.
Right.
He didn't want to be the chief and the king, and he didn't want all those the high offices. He wanted to be right with the sick. Mm-hmm. He was just healing our people the whole time. Oh.
Joe Beans put 1 Corinthians 15 and 9. Let's get that. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 9.
This is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 9. Mm-hmm. For I am the least of the apostles, that I am not meet to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God.
So this is the humility Paul is exercising because of what he did, being the old creature that is now the new creature in Christ. Go ahead.
But by the grace of God, I am what I am.
Right, because he was renewed. Go ahead.
And his grace, which was bestowed upon me, was not in vain.
Go ahead.
But I labored more abundantly than they all. Yet not I, but the grace of God, which was with me.
So in all of your Bibles, you can clearly see all of the traveling Paul did that we read about in the book of Acts. Mm-hmm. And you can see and note that despite his shipwrecking, jail, being beaten and persecuted, he continued to work and labor, which is why he has the right to say labored more than them all, because he was also an apostle to the Gentiles. Right. Who we know, of course, to be Israelites scattered, so on and so forth, through their nationalities, and him going to teach unto them wherever it is that he was sent to. So when it says that he labored more abundantly than they all, because of who he was, he put more of the work in being a new creature in Christ that will eventually and had washed away of what he did and who he was, being the new creature that he was. Let's get read 2 Ezra chapter 14 and verse 13.
This is 2 Ezra chapter 13, verse 14, right?
Come.
Thou hast showed thy servant these wonders from the beginning, and hast counted me worthy that thou shalt receive my prayer. Mm-hmm. Show me now yet the interpretation of
14 and 13.
14 and 13? No, this is 2 Ezra chapter 14, verse 13. Now therefore, set thine house in order, and reprove thy people. Comfort such of them as be in trouble, and now renounce corruption.
So, we know that Passover is coming. We know that every single year it's cleanup season. Every single year. And we know that the Egyptians being wiped out and the firstborn in Egypt that we read about in the book of Exodus, it's important for us to understand that every single year that it happens, it's not just to the Gentiles, it's also to the nation of Israel to be paying attention to, because it's around the time, it's the time that we were delivered out of that ancient captivity. So if we understand that and we know that, it's important for all of us now to realize and understand, just as he delivered us then, is how he'll deliver us now. It's also important for us to realize it's time to clean up house. As the saying goes, and as all of you have heard, it's the season and time to clean up house. It's important because all of us have a job to do. All of us have a purpose. All of us have a mission. As we read about in 2 Ezra chapter 2, we are all striving for crowns. We all desire to make it to the kingdom of heaven. In Revelation 21:4, Yahawashi said he shall wipe all tears away. There's not going to be any more sorrow, no more death. The nation of Israel will be on top. From the very beginning of the lesson, the parable in Matthew 20, we agreed to work. We're all servants of Christ. Well, guess what? Strive and work towards the mark so that your work comes out as gold, not as silver, but gold, because you're trying and doing your best to put forth your best effort, not slacking and being lazy, like how we found those men at the 11th hour and rebuked them because they're just standing there idle doing nothing. I have plenty of work for you to do. Why are you just standing here? The harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. We have to know and understand that. And if we know and understand that, that's why he needs more laborers into the harvest, because there's a lot of work to do, and it's endless. So until he returns, we have to keep tending to the vineyard as we are husbandmen to do everything that we need to do and are supposed to be doing, because it's what we've been since the beginning of time. And with this parable shows us that we are going to receive whatever it is, no matter what hour any single one of us came in at, what it is that we all work for. And in that day, when your works are tried by the fire, they're going to be revealed. Do not allow your works to be burned up because you did the bare minimum and absolutely nothing. As Yahawashi gave the parable inside, gave another parable, when he came back and from those servants that multiplied their talents, here, you'll be Lord over 20 cities. You'll be Lord over 10 cities. You'll be Lord over 5 cities. Because you did as I commanded and you doubled what I gave you. Use your talents, use your gift accordingly for whatever it is your purpose, your purpose, your mission is, that in the end you may be accomplished. Let your works come out refurnished and refined, not burned up as wood, hay, and stubble. As Yashar put in the comments, gold's prominence in the Bible is tied to its rarity, beauty, durability, and its role as a symbol of divine majesty and eternal worth. That means you did the absolute best you could, and you're worthy to be crowned as that man was in 2 Ezra chapter 2. All right. Are there any more questions, comments, concerns about the parable of the laborers from Matthew chapter 20? Any comments, concerns, questions before we close out the lesson? All right. This is a Hebrew prayer. Abanawi Yahweh Sha'aya Lathabawa Baharacha Kakma Nakar Washakal. Athahaya Hamakwar Yasawadya Al Hawa'a Kaldabarya. La'a Izab Banya Wa Ibad Aba Haya Yatazab Awalam.
Hayab Mashawaka Shal Tazal Wasatoria Thamyad. This is the translation. Our Father, I ask you for increase in the spirit, wisdom, discernment, and understanding. You are the fount of my life, my foundation upon which I put all things. Forsake not your servant, forsake not your son and servant, but be present always in the hedge of defense and protection always. In the name of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Tawada, Thamyad, Aman.
Aman. Imagine Shabbat. Imagine Barak. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshua Brakatah.
Yahawashi, Yahawashi, Brakatah.